from Global, leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. I'm here in Brussels. It's the European Summit. This, of course, was supposed to be the big one, the deadline. This was the one at which a deal on us leaving the European Union was supposed to be agreed, and then we'd come back in a couple of weeks to talk about, a framework for a future trade negotiation. It's kind of not working out that way, really, is it? I mean, a week ago, the government seemed pretty confident that they were going to come here, sign up to something that I'd call checkers minus, namely keeping us in a customs union until about the end of 2021, or maybe even longer than that. But something happened over here on Sunday. Was it that the European Union pushed too far, wanting their backstop to the backstop, or was it, I think more realistically, that actually Number 10 got pretty panicky over the weekend? They sure scale of opposition, 63 backbench MPs writing to a Sunday newspaper, the DUP becoming more hardline, and realised if they came and signed the deal this week, she'd probably have not just 48 letters in for the weekend, but a whole slew of cabinet resignations as well. So the Prime Minister has arrived here at the summit, and nobody is expecting anything too much. There's a big dinner tonight, by the way. Yep, 27 leaders of Europe will sit down to a fine, sumptuous dinner, I've no doubt with great wine. Someone's going to be missing from that dinner, Theresa May. We'll talk about that during this programme. But what really interests me is the level of activity that we are now seeing from Nick Clegg, Tony Blair, Michael Heseltine, John Major, Peter Mandelson, you name it. They are all incredibly active. Now, a few moments ago, Nick Clegg, who appears to be a bit of a coordinator for all of these people, and bear in mind, they are trying hard to stop us leaving the European Union. Indeed, there was an article today in a German newspaper co-signed by Blair, Clegg and Heseltine. We're hearing that Tony Blair just last week was visiting politicians in Germany, Austria, Italy. Blair even met the EU's Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier. There is an all-out diplomatic assault going on from some very senior figures, prime ministers in British politics over the last quarter of a century. And Nick Clegg was on with Eddie Mair a few minutes ago, and Eddie asked Nick Clegg about these letters and newspaper articles.
I like to think that if the government was delivering something which approximates to what the British people were told they were going to get when they voted for Brexit, if by a narrow margin in the summer of 2016, I hope I would gracefully or disgracefully just sort of, mind my own business. The longer this has gone on for 2.5 years now, and the more that the reality of Brexit departs from the utopian Brexit that was proposed to people, the more I think it's legitimate to say, well, maybe folks should be given a chance to sign this off before the process finally goes through.
You're all very stupid people. You should not have voted for Brexit. We are going to make sure you vote again. But interestingly, Eddie asked Nick Clegg a really fascinating question. What would he be doing had the referendum that took place on June 23rd, 2016 been for Remain?
I'll take the better analogy is this. Let's say if Remain had won, and it was by the narrow margin, was it 600,000 votes in it? And let's say then, I think it was unlikely, but let's say then the winning side, the Remainers, me amongst them, said, right, the British people have, by a narrow margin, decided to stay in the European Union. We are now going to join a European army. We're going to join the Eurozone tomorrow. We're going to give up our rebate. We're going to scrap our exemption from Schengen. In other words, we are going to take the most extreme version of remaining in the European Union possible, and we're going to impose it on the country, even though none of these things were fully discussed at the time of the referendum. Do you know what? If at that point the Boris Johnson, Michael Goves and Nigel Farage of this world said, hang on a minute, that is so far from what you told the British people 2.5 years ago, they should be allowed to have another say, I would actually understand why they might say it. Because that
I would understand why they might say it, but I wouldn't support another referendum. And indeed, when we joined the common market back in 1973, we were told it was just about trade, and it morphed bit by bit into politics. And how dare Nick Clegg have the audacity to even mention a European army, something that Jean-Claude Juncker is hell-bent on building, in fact completing by 2025. When I debated that with Nick Clegg on the LBC debate back in 2014 with Nick Ferrari in the chair, and I said one of the reasons I wanted to leave is that it was becoming an increasingly militarised European Union, he called me a dangerous fantasist. Well, I'm sorry, I think the way these people are behaving is quite extraordinary. I'm asking you, do you agree with me that this action from these senior British political figures is nothing short of collusion with the European Union, with foreign powers. If you think Farage is right, call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think I'm wrong, and actually they're acting in a national interest, in which case text to 84850. Or maybe there's something else you think about their behaviour. Let me know by tweeting, using the hashtag Farage and LBC, at LBC, and of course, Facebookers, you can comment there too. And by the way, Mr. Clegg, this narrow margin of victory that you're talking about wasn't 600,000, it was 1.26 million. But hey, who cares about numbers when you are doing your best to overturn the greatest democratic exercise in the history of the United Kingdom? My first caller this evening is a new caller of the show, Marcel, who's calling from Gloucester. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Nice to talk to you. That was a point I was going to say about the 600,000 gap. But it was nice. I don't know why Nick Clegg can get away with this, because he was the one who mentioned you as being a decent fella. And
Yes.
That was in his Oxford speech. Mm-hmm. And no matter how close the majority is, we must respect it. And he looked at you and said, not carry on the fight like a Japanese soldier lost in the jungle. And I'd like LBC to find that and play it, just to remind a few of these Remainers, because I did play it to a couple of Remainers and it did change their opinion about Nick Clegg.
Marcel, isn't the point about this that everybody told us, including that government leaflet that David Cameron spent 9 million quid of our money on and put through our doors, everyone told us if we chose to leave, that would be implemented. And now we have some of the giants of politics from the last 25 years, people I've fought for the last 25 years, doing their damnedest to overturn it. Isn't there something fundamentally wrong about that?
Yes, there is. These people are not even in Westminster now, not even in the Parliament. So what are they doing going over, getting involved?
Because they're devotees, Marcel, to the European project. Thank you. Let's go to Lydia, a new caller from Leeds. Good evening, Lydia.
Good evening, Nigel. What I'd like to say, I listen to you on and off most evenings. Anyway, what I'd like to say to you is that where I live and the people I know, the people I speak to and what I see around me, is that people who have never voted in their lives in any general election voted to leave the European Union.
Yes.
2 or 3 years ago, 2015.
2016. Let's remind ourselves.
You got what you wanted. You stepped back. You cut it off. You separated yourself. You got what you wanted. You got out of it. And where are they now? And where are we now? All the money, everything's going to go up. Prices are going to rocket.
No, they're not, Lydia. Lydia, they're not going to go up. They're not going to go. Why do you think prices are going to go up? Why do you think
in this country we're going to go back
prices are going to
the
go
following
up?
day, and they didn't.
Oh dear,
and
dear,
they
dear.
won't.
Lydia,
That's what it was
Lydia,
about.
if you listen for a second, when we joined the common market, we were told that if we didn't join the common market, we'd have expensive food. It was going to give us cheaper food. It gave us the opposite. Now we're leaving. You're telling me food's going to go up because we leave? Why?
Experience for me at talking, I'm telling you. But everybody
tell me some facts, please.
Who voted for you thought that everybody in this country who had come here as migrants were going to get shipped back the following day.
No, they didn't. No, they don't. No, they didn't. No, they did not.
Yes,
that is
they
utter.
Yes,
that is
they did.
utter,
Complete
rubbish. And by the way, Lydia, the best thing about no deal, the best thing about a WTO deal is we will be able to make food cheaper, shoes cheaper, bras cheaper, something the other side never tell us. Lydia, you've got it wrong. We argued for control of our borders. Very simple, very straightforward, and supported by an overwhelming majority of the British people. And you're quite right in one thing. Many people who voted in that referendum had never voted in their lives, which is why a second referendum would be a very dangerous thing. I'm going to go to Adam, who's calling from Westminster. Adam, do you think that the Cleggs and the Blairs and the Majors and the Heseltines, do you think they're colluding with a foreign power, or are they actually acting to save us from ourselves?
I think that quartet that you have just mentioned, Mr. Farage, and good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
They should seek urgent medical attention because they're obviously a bit bonkers. What they don't seem to understand, and I'm glad that gentlemen like yourself who initiated this whole process, and thank you very much, thank goodness there's people like you who can actually speak to the common man and woman in the street, and people like myself can absolutely resonate and concur with what you're saying. This establishment just cannot understand how we had the temerity to do something which they didn't like.
Absolutely.
Now then, at the end of the day, we didn't vote for a type of Brexit. We voted in or out. It wasn't type of Brexit A, B, C, or D. And they can't handle it. And I'm glad people like yourself, Nigel, and I can't say it enough, torment the living daylights of these absolute lunatics who are trying to usurp the will of the people, and they never will.
Well, I have to say, Adam, I think what they're doing is an absolute disgrace. I think it devalues democracy, and in particular, those people who'd never voted before in their lives that went out in this referendum, which is what made it the greatest exercise in democracy, in the history of our country. And I think to put them back to the ballot box before Brexit's even been enacted, I think would be very, very damaging for democracy and very damaging for our nation, Adam.
I couldn't agree with you more, Nigel, and please keep tormenting these people as best you can. Thank you very much.
Well, I think they're tormenting themselves now. Adam, thank you very much indeed. And I do believe that. I think they have been, it is Brexit derangement syndrome. They simply can't cope with it. They'd had it their own way for a very, very long time. And they are actually not only colluding with Monsieur Barnier and other leaders around Europe to try and stop Brexit from happening, they're actually acting against the settled will of the British people. Some would use stronger words like collaboration. I'm not sure that I would, though. It's now 6:15 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
Former Deputy Prime Minister Sir Nick Clegg has told LBC the British people should be given the chance to vote on the final terms of Brexit because they were only offered a utopian view during the referendum campaign. Speaking in Brussels ahead of meeting EU leaders, Theresa May told reporters she still believes a deal, though, is achievable and now is the time to make it happen. And tens of thousands of passengers who use London's Paddington Station are being warned of continued disruption to train services tomorrow after a major problem with dislodged overhead cabling. LBC weather staying grey and cloudy with the odd spot of rain in southeast England tonight. Clearer though elsewhere, a low of freezing.
LBC Travel, I'm Louise Knight, and a horrendous rush hour on public transport this evening. Severe disruption, of course, to and from Paddington after damage to the overhead wires last night. Great Western still have a reduced service with no service at all on the Greenford branch. Heathrow Express have a reduced service and there are severe delays on TfL Rail. Network Rail have now said disruption may continue into tomorrow morning. Now on the tubes, the Victoria line is part suspended with severe delays on the rest of the line. There's no Metropolitan line Baker Street to Aldgate and severe delays on the whole of the Hammersmith and City and Circle lines. As for the roads, the A3 Clapham Common South side's blocked both ways with an accident near Long Road. There are queues coming into town on the A2 up towards an oil spillage on the Woolwich Road flyover, but better news in Cranford, the parkway is open again after an accident earlier.
This is LBC.
The real reason Sleeping Beauty fell asleep was because it was taking so long for the palace to sell, and the handsome prince needed the proceeds to buy their new home with no time to dwell.
I know who can help. Property Rescue. I'll contact them straight away.
So he spoke to their friendly team who took care of every detail. They bought the palace direct with no legal fees to pay. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to solve.
If you're a chippy, a florist, or a brickie, no matter what you use your van for, you're there when your customers need you. And we're here when you need us. With Aviva Van Insurance, if your vehicle's unsafe to drive after an accident, you can call our claims line 24/7 and we'll aim to replace it within 24 hours. Keep your business on the road. Get a quote today, direct from aviva.co.uk.
Optional cover replacement may not be available until the next working day. Comprehensive cover only.
The twins changed everything. One minute we're looking at flats near cafes and a buzzing nightlife. The next we're obsessing over green spaces and reliable babysitters. So this move was a biggie. Out of town, near family, somewhere we could settle.
Wherever you are on the ladder, The Post Office has lots of mortgages to help you get to where you want to be. Search Post Office Mortgages to find out more. Post Office money mortgages are provided by Bank of Ireland UK. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
So tell us your name and what you do.
My name's Olivia. I'm a hermit crab, passionate about dance, and I'm a proud mum to 49 darling hermit crabs.
Wow, you must need a lot of room for the kids, not the dancing.
Oh, we've got a 4-bedroom house with an extension and garden.
Oh, where did you find it?
Zoopla. Me and the hubby used the running costs tool to see if we could afford the rent, energy bills and council tax.
Clever.
We've even got an idea of the water bills. Great for us crabs. Oh, is this live? Can I show you some of my dance moves?
Yeah, it's radio, no one's going to see you.
Oh.
Find and move with Zoopla. Smarter about property. Lanes 2 and 3 have reopened between the junction 1 and the roundabout northbound slope southbound.
Driving is not a game. If you tailgate the car in front, the closer you get, the less time you'll have to react. Don't be a space invader. Stay safe. Stay back. Search Highways England for more information.
We've got it at Selco. Selco, it's where the trade go.
At Selco Builders Warehouse, we've got real deals on a wide range of trade-quality building products. In October, we've got up to 15% off all radiators. Now that's a real deal. We've got even more real deals at Selco Builders Warehouse. For more information, see selcobw.com.
We've got it at Selco. Selco, it's where the trade go.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Tony Blair, John Major, Michael Heseltine, Nick Clegg, they're writing letters, they're writing articles in German newspapers, they're travelling around Europe, they're meeting Monsieur Barnier. They're urging the European Union to help them to stop Brexit from happening. And I'm asking you, is this nothing short of collusion with a foreign power? Or do you think, alternatively, they're perhaps acting in the national interest? Well, Theresa May turned up a couple of hours ago, and here was her outside the main hall.
I will be talking to leaders tonight about the very good progress that has been made since Salzburg, both on the withdrawal agreement and our future partnership. The teams have been working very hard in order to ensure that we can address these issues. What we've seen is that we've solved most of the issues in withdrawal agreement. There is still the question of the Northern Irish backstop, but I believe everybody around the table wants to get a deal. By working intensively and closely, we can achieve that deal. I believe a deal is achievable, and now is the time to make it happen.
If they offer you another year on the transition period in order to help get this deal done, would you accept it?
What we will be doing is looking at the issues that we need to address in relation to the backstop on Northern Ireland. I believe it is possible, by working together, to find a resolution to that issue, and a resolution that ensures that we are able to move forward with the full package, with the future partnership as well. Considerable progress has been made since Salzburg. By working intensively over the next days and weeks, I believe we can achieve a deal that I believe everybody wants, and a deal that is in the interest not just of the UK but also of the European Union.
Well, she has not made considerable progress with her own cabinet and with her own party. And isn't it interesting, when she's asked, what about another year on the transition? And she doesn't give an answer at all. And I've said from the start that transition was the trap. Article 50, that 2-year process, that was supposed to be the transition. And what really they're going for now is a transition that probably includes us being part of the customs union until the next general election, when a government might get elected that decides to keep us in forever. They're not honouring their promises. They're not delivering on Brexit. And tonight, I tell you something, I mean, they were rude to her at Salzburg, but she's not exactly going to be made to feel very welcome this evening. So the 27 of them are having a grand dinner. Now, look, I've been to a few of these over the years here. Believe you me, not only is the food top-notch, the wine is out of this world. And I think under Mr. Juncker's orders, they make sure the glasses are filled up all the time. Because the fact is, folks, you're paying for all of this out of your taxes. And yet, can you believe the insult? The British Prime Minister is going to be allowed to address them before the dinner, they all go off then to have dinner, leaving Theresa to pop round to the local kebab shop. I mean, at no point in this process do they do anything other than treat the leader of our country in the most humiliating way. I'm not a fan of Theresa May, but to see the leader of my country being treated like this, I think it's absolutely appalling. Right, back to this sort of gang of four, really, I guess is what we can call them. I'm talking about Blair, Major, Clegg and Heseltine. Are they colluding or are they acting in our own interests to save us from our own stupidity? What does Jeff in Hedge End make of it? Jeff, good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, nice to talk to you. Well, you've used the word collusion and collaboration, but I'd go a bit further. I find their behaviour actually treasonous. They're actually working against us. Yeah, I think they're working against the will of the English people, British people. I cannot understand what they're up to. I mean, they seem to know nothing whatsoever about negotiation. They keep responding to the EU instead of making our own demands.
Well, I tell you what, one person, Jeff, who was absolutely useless at negotiating with the European Union was Tony Blair. Well, David would argue that his best efforts were overawed by Ollie Robbins and the civil service, and and one day we'll find out the exact truth of what's happened here. But Tony Blair, back in 2005, took the rotating presidency of the European Union, a position that Mr. Tusk now holds on a more permanent basis. And Tony Blair, and I was here in Brussels in the chamber, it was going to be a great reforming 6 months. And he finished up at the end of that 6 months, having got a vague promise from the French that they might talk about reforming the common agricultural policy, but not doing it, and giving away 7 billion quid of British taxpayers' rebates. So their own track record, Jeff, is awful. On reflection, Jeff, do you want to water down that word treasonous a bit?
No, I want them to grow a bloody back. Sorry, I want them to grow a backbone and turn round to the likes of Juncker and all the rest of them and Barnier and say, when you can put somebody in front of me who actually has a democratic mandate to negotiate, then I'll start talking to you. If you can't do that, sorry, we're off. All right. OK, Jeff, strong words there from Hedge End in Hampshire. If anyone thinks Jeff is completely wrong to use that language, call 0345 6060 973. Gary is calling from Blackburn. Good evening, Gary.
Good evening, Nigel. Treasonous is a little bit ridiculous. I don't think treasonous is the right word to use, but I'm not sure that it helps anybody to have political figures, senior political figures from Britain, going to the continent and whispering into anyone's ear when our Prime Minister is going out to try and do a deal.
So they're undermining her, really, aren't they?
But my argument was we lost, and so if we're going to have Brexit, we should have Brexit at the best Brexit possible, as promptly as possible. And there just seems to have been a lot of dallying about, a lot of not thinking about it, and a lot of panicking at the end, and we don't seem to have gotten very far down that road, do we?
Well, no, but in fact, actually, one of the things that is happening now out there is, Blair, we understand from his negotiations with Barnier and with senior German and Austrian politicians, one of the things Blair now wants to do is to extend Article 50 so that we don't even actually leave the treaty on March the 29th next year. Now, this is, surely, Gary, and I'm not going to use the word that Jeff just used, but surely this is acting against the democratic express will of the British people, and it's plain wrong, isn't it?
Well, let's talk about that, Nigel, because I saw an interview with you the other day on Sky News where the newscaster, the presenter, was talking to you, trying to make the point that 52% of people voting to leave was a narrow margin. And you said, no, the will of the people's vote, and it's all very clear. And, in numerical strength, you're right. However, in May 2016, before the referendum, you are on the record as saying if it's 52% to remain and 48% to leave, this is unfinished business by a long chalk.
Well,
and
I did say,
even possibly asking for a second referendum.
No, I said there'd be. I said, Gary, I said it would be unfinished business, and some from the Conservative Party would go on, but I thought it would be at least 20 years before we had the chance of another referendum. And I promise you, had Remain won, Gary, we wouldn't even be having this debate, would we?
Well, you suggested, Nigel, that it should be two-thirds would be a reasonable majority. So how come 52% to remain wouldn't be good enough, but 52% to leave is bob on? Just explain that to me.
Because the establishment, if they'd won, would never have allowed this to be reopened again, and the number of MPs in Parliament that might have voted for this would have been way fewer than 100, probably fewer than 50. The reason we're having this whole debate is because the establishment don't accept the result. Surely that's the truth of it, Gary, isn't it?
That's not the point. 52-48 to leave, you're happy with. If it had been 52-48 to remain, you wouldn't have been happy with.
I wouldn't have had a voice. I wouldn't have had a voice. There would have been no debate. There would have been no voice. Surely you accept that if the establishment had won, this would not have been reopened.
I don't accept that at all. I think that people would have... Well, okay, I might be wrong. So might you be.
Well, no, I don't think so, because I know how this lot operate, and I promise you, if they'd won, that would have been the end of it. Anyway, Gary, we'll agree to disagree. I'll go to Sevenoaks and speak to Paul. Good evening, Paul.
Hello, Nigel. All right. I didn't ring up about that, but just to say what Gary said, they never accept the result. They didn't in Denmark, France, and Ireland, I believe. 3 times they went. They overturned the votes, and they was pretty narrow. But then they give a few sweeteners.
And you know what, Paul? They've never rerun a single referendum where they got the result they wanted.
No, of course not. Of course they won't. I mean, the reason I rang about Blair and Major and being traitors and Heseltine, because I think it goes as far back as him. He did for Maggie, and she would have stood up for this lot. Major obviously was there playing his part. He tucked Maggie up. He went and signed up for the Maastricht Treaty. We never ever got asked. Then Blair come in. Tony Blair's 1983 first ever MP, where he was up in Sedge, wherever it was.
Beaconsfield he was,
wherever it was. And he had a thing. He didn't support the EU in 1983. He didn't. Then I suppose he saw what opportunities there was, the same as Kinnock, got aboard the gravy train, and now he's a massive supporter of it. You know, they're traitors. He didn't sign up.
Do you really? I mean, Paul, come on. You know, I can tell you feel strongly on this, but the word traitor is a very, very strong word.
Yeah, traitor is someone who's sort of not loyal to their own country, isn't it? And they're not, because they're siding with the enemy. They're siding with the enemy, Nigel. They are the enemy because they're treating us like...
I'm going to go... Paul, I'm going to go as far as to accuse them of collusion. There's a couple of people there saying actually their actions are traitorous. Please tell me they're wrong. 0345 6060 973. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's now 6:30 and time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
Former Deputy Prime Minister Sir Nick Clegg has told LBC the British people should be given the chance to vote on the final terms of Brexit because they were only offered a utopian view during the referendum campaign. While in Brussels tonight, Theresa May has been meeting the President of the European Commission ahead of addressing EU leaders, insisting to reporters she still believes a deal is achievable. The government's facing a bill of more than £1.5 billion after underpaying tens of thousands of people claiming sickness benefits. The Department for Work and Pensions has estimated the average back payment to each claimant will be £5,000. Tens of thousands of passengers who use London's Paddington station are being warned of continued disruption to services tomorrow. It's after a test train damaged hundreds of metres of cabling last night, causing problems all through today. LBC weather staying grey and cloudy with the odd spot of rain in southeast England overnight. Clearer though elsewhere, some foggy patches, a low of freezing.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, weekday mornings from 7. LBC.
Dame Margaret Beckett is a member of the Committee on Standards in Public Life and joins me now. Play some of your words back to you. The country's currently in, quotes, complete chaos. He's not done a very good job to date then. Why is he going to get any better?
Well, he's not in charge of the Brexit process.
Well, why does it matter then? Who's Speaker?
To have somebody in the chair who has experienced these pressures, dealt with them over a long period of time, seems to me to be essential.
There are, I'm sure, very senior politicians who could rise to the challenge.
But they would not be doing it with experience in the Speaker's chair.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, weekday mornings from 7. LBC.
Do you have heart disease, diabetes, maybe kidney or liver disease? Flu on top of health conditions like these can easily develop into something very serious and land you in hospital. That's why the flu jab is free for you. You need it. So don't put it off. Contact your GP or pharmacist to get your free flu jab now. NHS. We're all here to help you stay well this winter.
For hundreds of years, Indian food has been about sharing great food with the people you love. For over 5 years, Manjal Restaurant have brought North and South India together in the heart of London. And due to its success, now we've come to Chigwell Loughton. Experience the essence of India and make memories with Manjal. Book now at manjalrestaurant.com.
Lanes 2 and 3 have reopened between the junction 1 and the roundabout northbound slope from southbound.
Driving is not a game. If you tailgate the car in front, the closer you get, the less time you'll have to react. Don't be a space invader. Stay safe. Stay back. Search Highways England for more information.
Did you know that if you have a child under 12, you can get up to £2,000 from the government to help with childcare costs? Which we think is pretty cool.
Don't miss out on government help towards your childcare costs. Get up to £2,000 per child per year. Find out more at childcarechoices.gov.uk. Subject to eligibility.
With Clearaby, getting rid of rubbish is quick, easy and affordable.
Clear rubbish easily. Clearaby.
Hey.
Hi, Dad.
I just ran 5.65k in my best time ever. Really did it. Okay.
Not everyone's into your activity levels, but we are at Vitality. That's why our health and life insurance rewards you when you're active, with things like a weekly Starbucks coffee. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality. Health and life insurance from Vitality. Positively different. Rewards available with certain plans. Minimum monthly premiums and conditions apply.
It's time. Time to join the millions of people that meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. With stunning HD video, crisp audio, and instant wireless sharing across any mobile, tablet, or desktop device. But the best thing about Zoom? It just works. So ditch the distractions, join the movement, and meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. Visit zoom.us to set up your free account today. That's zoom.us. Zoom video conferencing.
Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Mrs May having a tough night in Brussels, not even invited to dinner, but told to go to the local kebab shop round the corner. That's how we're being treated here. There is not going to be any agreement here at what was supposed to be the deadline summit, though we know the direction of travel that this Prime Minister wants. She wants, and it basically is happy to have an extended transition period to keep us in the customs union. It's interesting, isn't it, that Trade Secretary Leitziger from the USA Today said that Donald Trump's America wants to sign free trade deals. And right at the top of the list is, you've guessed it, the United Kingdom. No longer are we Obama's back of the queue. We're right up at the front of the queue. Trouble is, under this current timetable with Theresa May, we wouldn't even be able to contemplate signing something like this until 2022 at the earliest, which would be a full 6 years after the British public had voted for Brexit. I do really believe all this hesitation and all this delay is making much of the world not take the UK particularly seriously. On text, Malcolm says, Blair and co are only looking after their own. They have no concern for the general voting public. That's quite a moderate way of putting it. Mark says, Brexit is a nightmare at this moment in time. Theresa May voted to stay in the EU, and now she is leading the negotiations to leave, which is a joke. Yeah, it's a pretty sick joke, Mark. It's not actually working. And the funny thing is, you know, after this breakdown that happened here on Sunday with Dominic Raab, the Brexit secretary, because I suspect she genuinely got scared about what her backbenchers in the DUP were saying, she tried on Monday with this statement to the House of Commons, which hadn't originally been in the diary. She tried to somehow pacify both sides and finished up upsetting just about everybody. Surely, they've got to get rid of her. Haven't we got to have a Prime Minister that actually believes in Brexit? Anyway, as for our friends, Blair, we've got Clegg, we've got Heseltine, we've got Major. They're openly colluding with the European Union and other governments to overturn the will of the British people. I think it's a disgrace. What do you think? What does Chris in Reading think?
Hi, I believe they're traitors. And, do you know, I would love it if UKIP got into power and brought back the death penalty for Trump.
The death penalty?
Yeah, the death penalty. It wouldn't be just them on it either.
Right. Well, I certainly...
You would in the Second World War. It would have happened in the Second World War, wouldn't it?
Well, I guess the counter-argument, Chris, is that we are still members of the European Union and therefore they're fully entitled to go and speak to them. I suppose that is one argument. But you clearly feel incredibly strongly about this.
Well, absolutely. And what you said earlier was partly why I was going to ring up, actually. The Nick Clegg, who called you more or less a conspiracy theorist about the European army.
Yep.
I'm surprised he hasn't really backtracked, you know, and actually said, you know what, I don't want to be part of this EU because of the European army. But no. And what's happened to Greece? No. That goes to show you his level of morals. He hasn't got any morals. He's got no morals.
Well, I think these people are fanatics, Chris. That's the point. They are fanatics about the European project and about building it. And they always tell us that the European Union has brought peace. And I think to myself, well, here they are building a European army. Here they are still with an expansionist policy. And they also want to remove veto over areas like foreign policy. I actually think in the years to come it could become quite dangerous, though I'm pleased to say, Chris, and this will cheer you up, an opinion poll published today from Italy shows that now only 44% of the Italian public think being in the European Union is worthwhile. That figure is even lower than the United Kingdom. And here's the funny thing. Here we are battling, Chris, our ex-senior politicians battling to keep us in. Much of the rest of Europe is beginning to reject it, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And you know what the funny thing is? There's so many, the people I know who voted Remain, they did because there were so many lies. And I still have a laugh with some of those people. You know, what happened then? What happened with all the world falling in? It didn't happen, did it?
No.
They were fed those lies. And there were people that said, I'd love to vote for them to leave, but they didn't because of the lies.
Yeah, and do you know, Chris, one last point about these four gentlemen that I'm talking about tonight. You know, three of them were strong advocates for us joining the Euro 20 years ago and told us that ruination would come to our islands if we didn't. Chris, I thank you for your call and your incredibly strong opinions. Vincent Exeter says, like yourself, I'm not a fan of Mrs May and her handling of Brexit, but I'm furious that the EU have excluded her from tonight's dinner. It's beyond childish. Yes, and the Brits are picking up much of the bill for it too. It's outrageous. I'm going to go to Michael, who's calling from Hitchin in Bedfordshire. Hi, Michael. Good evening.
Oh, hi, Nigel. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm probably having a better evening than Mrs May is, I'll have to say that. So what about the behaviour of Blair and Heseltine?
Well, I mean, I'm a veteran after serving over 22 years in the forces. I'm really going to sort of put you from my point of view. I've done 2 tours in Northern Ireland. I went to Iraq and I went to Afghanistan. And as you can imagine, I don't think anybody in Northern Ireland want to go back to the good old bad days, as we call it. When I was out in Belfast, I've seen, the results of bombings, kneecappings, and I really do believe that the people of Northern Ireland don't really want to go back to that type of days by having hard borders. Let's go on to...
Well, Michael, just one second. I utterly reject the idea that because we're leaving the European Union, there would need to be a hard border. Do you know, at the moment, there are excise duty differences between Northern Ireland and the Republic, but just as, and I was talking today to a guy who actually 30 years ago set up the arrangements between Canada and the United States of America. And you don't in the modern world have people stopping lorries and checking all the goods. Everything is done online. There's no need for a hard border at all. But Michael, go on with your next point, please.
Yeah, and I really want to go on to, Tony Blair. We went in in 2003. We were part of 7 Armoured Brigade, and I'll tell you this now, Nigel. None of us knew in 7 Armoured Brigade whether we were going to go or not. And it wasn't until, I think it was on January or February, one minute I was on the ranges at Horner, next minute I was flying into Kuwait. We just did not know at anything. So when you get people like Tony Blair saying that, listen to me, I really don't believe him at all what he's going to do, because I think he'll just sell us down the line. And in respect to, I love this nation. I love this country. We're such an open country. And I do believe people living in a bubble in London, because outside London, you really have got a staunch sort of Leave support, and until people understand that,
absolutely.
they're just going to be... Yeah.
Do you know, Michael, the last few weeks I've been going out around the country and doing public events, and I've never seen English people at public events screaming and shouting and believing something as strongly as they do. And the reason is, what we're debating here with Brexit now, it isn't just the issues, it's the fact that we voted for something that we believe we were going to get, and now we've got people like Blair that want to take it out of our grasp. But it makes us mad, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could just speak, there's a lot of veterans out there who take the same side as you. There is so much support from veterans who just want to get out, because we've laid our lives on the line. We've put our lives. We've done tours of Northern Ireland. We've been to Iraq. We've been to Afghanistan.
Yeah. And we thank you for it, Michael. We really genuinely do. I promise you we do.
And we support, so when people who try to say to us, we did not know what we were doing in 2016, I just say, think again, please.
I'd love to see you in a head-to-head with Tony Blair, Michael. I really would. Thank you very much indeed. Going to move on to Greenwich and speak to Marcus. Hi, Marcus.
Good evening, Nigel. I'm a first-time caller to your show.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me, are they colluding with foreign powers, or do you think what they're doing is actually saving us from a great stupidity?
No, Nigel, I think everyone needs just to take the heat out of this debate, for starters. They are private citizens who are entitled to their own opinion. Not necessarily have to say that I agree with them or disagree, but they can say what they wish. They have had a platform on the political stage in this country, and I think they're entitled to say what they wish.
But they've still got a platform, because they can go and meet Monsieur Barnier, they can go and meet Matteo Salvini, they can go and meet Mrs. Merkel, can't they?
If they're allowed to, if they're not turned away.
I mean, look, all I'm saying, Marcus, is they're not really just private citizens, are they?
No. Well, look, they've had their day in the limelight. They've had their say. They were elected in what way they could, or they were at least elected to certain levels of office when their time came. And yes, fine, they have a certain status, which obviously can add some clout. But I think you look on the other side. People are entitled to hear from other peoples and different opinions as they wish. But what I also wanted to ask you, Nigel, is you've obviously stated on numerous occasions how important this decision was and how much the referendum, the most single democratic exercise in British history. I get that. I'm not a British individual. I could vote in the referendum. I'm a German national. And I accept the result for what it is. And I don't believe that there should be a second referendum. However, I'd like to ask you, why are you so against having a potential extension of Article 50 if it means that both sides have more to... Please let me finish, sorry.
Well, we're running out of time. Marcus.
If both sides have more time to finalise a deal which will be better in the better interest of both parties.
Because, Marcus, what is happening here, they are trying to make sure that we're still part of the European Union at the time of the next general election, so they have a chance of keeping us in forever. That is why I'm opposed to it. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 6:45 and time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
Sir Nick Clegg's told LBC British people should be given the chance to sign off on the final Brexit deal and its detail because they'd been promised the moon on a stick during the referendum campaign. Speaking in Brussels ahead of addressing EU leaders later, Theresa May's told reporters she still believes a deal is achievable and now is the time to make it happen. And tens of thousands of passengers who use London's Paddington station are being warned of continued disruption to train services tomorrow after a major problem with dislodged overhead cables. LBC weather staying grey and cloudy with the odd spot of rain in southeast England overnight, clearer elsewhere, a low of freezing.
LBC Travel, I'm Louise Knight, and there's severe disruptions still on all service to and from Paddington Station after damage to the overhead wires last night. Great Western have a reduced service with their whole of their Greenford branch suspended. Heathrow Express are also running a reduced service and there are severe delays on TfL Rail. Network Rail have said disruption may continue into tomorrow morning, but of course we will keep you up to date. A nightmare on the tube this afternoon after several earlier signal failures. The Victoria line is up and running again, but with severe delays across the whole line. There are severe delays on the Metropolitan line, the Hammersmith and City line, as well as the Circle line. As for the roads, queues in town on the A2 towards an oil spillage at the Woolwich Road flyover, and the A3 Clapham Common South side remains blocked with an accident at Long Road.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
On Cross Question at 8, Conservative Dominic Grieve, Labour's Luciana Berger, The Guardian Zoe Williams and UKIP's Suzanne Evans. At 9, Saudi Arabia. But first, the LBC News Hour.
Ian Dale on LBC.
Strong relationships and great communication are key for any business to keep moving forward. BT is here to help you maintain both. As the UK's most popular fibre network, we power most of the FTSE 350, as well as emergency services, schools and hospitals. Find out more and enter to win a state-of-the-art tablet computer, headphones and an Amazon Echo Plus at lbc.co.uk. BT, helping business relationships stay on track.
Is your money working as hard as you do? Think about it. While you're grafting away, is your money working too? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Wealthify is the smart, easy way to start investing. Just say how you want to invest. Cautious, adventurous, somewhere in between? And let Wealthify do the rest. Then keep track of your money on the app. Easy. Isn't it time for you to Wealthify? Download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
Senecalm helps relieve IBS gas-related symptoms. A calm gut can lead to a calm mind, a feeling we like to call gutfulness. And breathe. Achieve gutfulness with help from Senecalm. Always read the instructions.
I start with an O. I end with a Y. I am the second biggest preventable cause of cancer. What am I? Did you guess it? The biggest preventable cause of cancer after smoking is obesity. Search Cancer Research UK Obesity for the facts.
This is the sound of the Walker's wedding in Oxford. Only a bouquet's throw away from a Holiday Inn hotel. What are you doing this weekend? It all begins at holidayinn.com.
Lanes 2 and 3 have reopened between the junction 1 and the roundabout northbound slope southbound.
Driving is not a game. If you tailgate the car in front, the closer you get, the less time you'll have to react. Don't be a space invader. Stay safe. Stay back. Search Highways England for more information.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, Mrs. May is, as we speak, I think, talking to other European leaders, and they're going to go off for dinner, and she's been excluded, and then there'll be some bilateral meetings tomorrow, and then she'll come back to London. I'm with Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. What sort of reaction is she going to get when she comes back with no deal? Is it going to be seen that she hasn't given in to the European Union? Suddenly it's the heroine May again.
Well, I think there's a degree now of scepticism on all sides of the House of Commons, especially within her own party, from the Brexiteers, who saw what happened at the weekend with Dominic Raab going to Europe, overruling the chief civil servant negotiator, Ollie Robbins, and saying that it simply wasn't good enough. They see that as a charade, that Mrs May is trying to delay the inevitable. And what we've seen from Europe since then, and from the European leaders, is, well, Britain needs to come back, Mrs May needs to come back with firmer proposals to change her stance. What we've not seen from Europe is, OK, well, we're going to give ground on this particular point of the backstop. That's not happening. Now, Mrs May has the chance to try and make her case to, and has made her case this afternoon, to Leo Varadkar, the Irish Taoiseach, to Donald Tusk, the President of the Council, and Jean-Claude Juncker. But whether that's actually shifted the dial is very doubtful. And what they're saying to her is, you need to come back with a different proposal. You need to come back with something better. And so the fear many Brexiteers have is that simply by coming back and saying, well, we can't do a deal, that we delay it until December, and then Mrs May suddenly caves in, as she has done. They see it as she has done right throughout this negotiation process.
Yeah, all the way through. They've pretty much got from it whatever they wanted, really.
And what's interesting also this evening is that the government has submitted its view on a meaningful vote to the Procedure Committee of the House of Commons, saying that they don't think the motion on when she comes back with the final agreement should be amendable, i.e. there shouldn't be a meaningful vote. It is simply that the House of Commons has considered and agreed to the final agreement. Now that cuts both ways, because it was Dominic Grieve and the Remainers who were initially protesting that they wanted to vote it down if they didn't like it. But actually we could see quite a lot of pushback from the Brexiteers who say this isn't what we want either, because it's not actually honouring a commitment to deliver on the referendum by leaving the customs union and the single market.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they would say that. Absolutely. Theo, it's going to be a very interesting couple of months, that's for certain.
It is.
My guess is there'll be a deal of some kind done in November, December. Whether that gets passed by the House of Commons is a completely different question. Well, talk about honouring the result of the referendum. I think that Blair and Major and Heseltine and Clegg are dishonouring the result of the referendum by going around Europe, writing letters and articles and trying to stop Brexit. I think it's plain wrong. What does FA from Chatham make of this? Good evening.
Good evening. I think you're wrong, Nigel.
Okay.
But I think the most important thing that needs to be said, and I think the previous caller did say this, there's so much emotion, there's so much, I think, bordering on hatred and anger. I think you have a responsibility to say to callers to your program to stop using words like treacherous, collaborators, collusion. I don't think...
Oh, no. FA, I'm sorry. I've used the word collusion. I haven't used the other words.
I know you haven't. I'm not saying you have. I'm saying you should tell those who call into your program who use such words to say, hang on a minute. No.
Well,
I know. I think...
Well, I did. Hang on. I did. The first person that used the word traitor, I did ask him, would he like to withdraw the word? And he chose not to. All right. But there is strong emotion out there. But do you understand why they're angry?
I don't understand. No, I don't think I understand why they're angry. The interview you've just had with Thea Usher would demonstrate that, where we have a prime minister, frankly, pretty just hopeless. She can't please everybody. I agree. I wish she can just say, look, guys, this is really darn difficult. I can't do it. I can't honour it. At least people will respect her. She's trying to have it both ways, which is why Remainers and Leavers are equally angry at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but I think the basic message should be, look, let's be civil in our discourse, because you never know. People are heated up in their arguments and they come up and they say things. So people might act on it. And I think I'm not saying you are encouraging them. I think you need to be much more forceful in saying to people, I'm sorry, you have the right to disagree with Tony Blair, Michael Hesner or who whatsoever, but don't use these words about them. They're British. They have a point of view. I mean, I can't imagine anyone silencing you, Nigel. Even when we were within the EU, you kept on fighting your case. Credit to you. Others have the same right, like me, to continue to argue my case for us to remain.
In a way, you've just made an argument that reminds me of what the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, said. Andy Burnham said, if people were asked to vote for a second time, it could lead to civil disorder. And that, to me, is a very good reason for honouring that referendum vote. Let's deliver the Brexit people voted for. And if a few years down the line people want to reconsider it, they can. FA, I do take your point about language. There is a pretty febrile atmosphere out there. Now, I was in Bournemouth on Monday where the crowd were going absolutely crackers. And my next caller is Philip, a new caller from Bournemouth. Philip, were you at that meeting or did you hear about it?
No, I wasn't. I'm afraid I was at work, but I did hear about it. There were a lot of angry people on the internet, but that usually is what the internet is all about.
Sure,
on
both sides of the argument, actually. Yeah.
Firstly, thank you for taking my call. Secondly, I find Nick Clegg slightly really just sort of disingenuous. For donkey's years, the EU has relied upon essentially voter apathy for any form of legitimacy in order to make laws and influence our lives. If you look at the average turnout stats across the entire EU, you're talking 30-odd%, mid-20s, 30%.
Do you mean for European elections?
Yes, I do.
It's a little higher than that, but hey, it's low, yeah.
Yeah, and then 70-odd something percent in the UK turn out and say, no more. We've had enough. And then suddenly we're all going around the houses having arguments about whether or not we knew what we voted for. I just find that the whole thing perplexing and bamboozling. And Nick Clegg rocks up on TV. He's relied on that voter apathy for donkey's years and to earn a pretty good, serious pension out of it. Maybe
isn't it really
declaring that interest every time?
Isn't it condescending?
Pension fund.
Isn't it condescending? Isn't it insulting of these people to basically tell us that we didn't know what we were voting for?
It's insulting to Dave from Sunderland and Tyne and Weir, and Dave is a first-time voter that's never voted in his life, and he's rocked up on polling day and decides, I'm going to partake in this because I've read the facts and I've formulated an opinion.
Yep.
And then Clegg rocks up and says, and we all know, maybe... And you notice how they always use that number, 52 to 48.
Yeah.
The difference between one. Yeah. They never use the number 1.7 million, do they? It's like the 1.7 million just don't really matter anymore. And I think I'll highlight one of the reasons why I voted to leave, or two reasons.
Philip, I'm going to have to let you go. Because we are out of time. But I do agree with sentiments that you express, and it is quite wrong of the way they're behaving, in my view. Well, I'm back tomorrow. I'll be here in Brussels. We'll see what breaks overnight. Maybe not very much.